Hello and welcome. You're watching Magazine India, and I'm Vishal Dahiya in our series of analysis of international affairs, the global events. Today, we're going to focus on the West Asia conflict. Everybody is talking about it. In fact, it has been almost a year now since the Hamas attack on Israel, which led to a chain of events, and now it has snowballed into a global conflict or a global issue as well. Israel, in response to the Hamas attack, then went into Gaza and dealt with the Hamas leadership, moved on to Lebanon and decimated the top leadership of Hezbollah as well. And now it is face to face with Iran. It's a long standing adversary in that particular region. So far, it has just been posturing between Iran and Israel. But over the past few days, in fact, a week, this has escalated into a serious conflict between these two nations, with Iran having fired a huge number of ballistic missiles at Israel and Israel vowing to go ahead and respond in kind. So, where do we stand, in fact, on the West Asia crisis, the Israel Iran conflict? How serious it is? And is there any way to wrangle out of this particular situation? For more on this, we're joined by a distinguished guest today on our show. Let me first introduce him to you. Ambassador Anil Trigunayat is joining us. Thank you, Ambassador Trigunayat, for joining us here on Magazine India. Ambassador Trigunayat is a very well known and respected Indian diplomat who has been also deployed as Indian envoy to Jordan and Libya, has a very clear grasp on the ongoings in the West Asia. Ambassador Trigunayat, I'll start with the brass tacks first. Let's set the ball rolling by trying to understand: are we past the point of no return in Israel-Iran conflict? Is the situation very critical right now? Are we waiting for the worst to happen, or is there still a possibility of a turnaround?
Well, thank you, Vishal, first for having me on your this illustrious channel. It's been always a great pleasure talking to you in different capacities earlier. But of course, this is one of the most serious challenges for West Asia or the Middle East, as the West calls it. Today, with the attacks that Iran has done, everybody is expecting a certain robust response from the Israelis. And then, if it gets into a chain reaction, then we are looking for a very disastrous kind of a scenario, which the world feared from day one, about a year ago, since October 7th, that this whole region might be entangled into this conflagration, and that will be the worst for everyone. Already the effect is visible in the higher oil prices, and there's a fears of maritime choke points being blocked. It is also possible that if the Iranian nuclear installations are attacked, then you have another kind of a response from Iranians. So what really led it to this place is not something that happened today. We know that in 1979, when Ayatollah Khomeini at the time took over after the Iranian Revolution, the two things that they followed in their policy was it was an anti-US and anti-Israel posture. They did not recognize Israel's right to exist. They still believe in one state solution, and that solution was Palestine. So, and both of them have suffered from this mutually assured destruction syndrome. So the Palestinian cause have given a justification to Iran, as most of the Arab countries were beginning to, I would say, getting the Palestinian fatigue. So we were not seeing or witnessing at least the leadership level, except pro forma statements that they still cared for Palestine. Israel found a niche in that, and it also, along with Trump, recognized and had good relationship with at least four Arab countries, and with most of the Arab countries, which was called Abraham Accords, and with most of the Arab countries in a clandestine manner. But they were all cooperating, collaborating on security matters and different other things. So Israel began to feel that it can do without bothering about the Palestinian issue. So since it was going, and you know that we had seen that after the Abraham Accords, the American administration, especially the Biden administration, was working overtime to normalize ties between Israel and Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, as you know, is also the leader of the Sunni world, of the Islamic world, and the thing there is the custodian of two holy mosques. So, if from that point of view, and Saudi Arabia is one country that has been proposing this Arab peace plan since 2002, the Land for Peace formula, and has been aiming for two-state solution. Now, if that thing could have happened, normalization between Saudi Arabia, which was going at a rather fast pace, if that had happened in October, we could have the thinking in the Palestinian circles, especially in the militant groups, was that this cause of Palestine would have been lost for good. In the meantime, there were two other countries that have come up for supporting the Palestinian cause more vehemently, founding an international legitimacy. They are Iran and Turkey, which also did not have good relations with the regional powers like Saudi Arabia and Emiratis and others. But in this period, with the retrenchment of the United States from the region, because they were focusing more on the Indo-Pacific, we saw that more and more countries thought that we should try to live together, some kind of modus vivendi. So we saw that rapprochement between Saudi Arabia and Iran, between UAE and Turkey and Egypt, like that. So most of these countries started talking to each other, minus Israel. Israel was, of course, part of the Abraham Accords. But then these October 7th attack came. One always expected that this will not go and die down. Already there were 4 or 5 wars between Israel and Hamas. And let us not forget that both Hezbollah and Hamas were the byproducts of Israel actions in Gaza and in Lebanon. I mean, they are not something they just came up like that. And Hamas was even nurtured by them to defeat the Palestinian unity. So that we have seen all through. But then the times have changed.
When the PLO was breathing down their neck.
That's right. When they brought down, then they were throughout. If they were united, then obviously they could have been a stronger force. And therefore, the 4 wars have taken place before this. Last one was in 2021 between Israel and Hamas. But none of these wars lasted more than a week or 10 days or 15 days. This is the one which is now 1 year. Now you can imagine the October 7th today. Yes.
October 7 to again October 7, almost a year, and you've given a wonderful lay of the land there when we're talking about the Arab world versus Israel as well. Too many complexities. Let's take them one by one and try and understand few things from this conflict's perspective as well. One is there are two, three things which becomes very clear. One is that this conflict, which started on 7th of October 2023 with the Hamas attack on Israeli citizens and its territories. This has, in past year, has sort of brought out that clear divide between in the Arab world as well. There is a divide in the Arab world. There are countries, which are very outspoken, like Iran and Turkey. You mentioned Iran, in fact, has gone one step ahead and launched ballistic missiles against Israel. That's one part. We have to understand that as well, and their intricacies involved. But the second part, again, which we need to understand is, has Iran, by firing those ballistic missiles on Israel, has crossed that line of no return from there? Because if Israel responds now, then Iran will have to respond in make a counter response as well, and this is how wars start.
Yeah. In fact, we are also looking at this war. There are 2 things we need to understand. That Iran by itself does not share borders with Israel. So they are about 1900 kilometers from one another. But what Iran has done over the years is created certain kind of proxies, which you can call as 4H. So 1H is Hezbollah, which is in Lebanon and Syria. Other one is Hamas, which is in Gaza, which is supported earlier, ironically, was supported also by Israel. And then you have Houthis in Yemen. And Houthis have shown their mettle in their war against Saudi Arabia and the 27 Sunni countries which were supporting, and eventually they were forced to come to the table to talk. And then in Iraq, you have these Islamic militias, or Kataib Hezbollah, as it is called. So there are these four H's which have provided Iran with an asymmetric advantage in the region. Now, Hezbollah, of course, has a border. Hamas has a border. So they are all together in that. So they can create, and Israel is not a very big country. So it is much more easier for them to reach and create problem for Israel. Now, since October 7 attack, which are terror attacks actually, and the more than 1,200 Israelis were killed and 250 taken hostages and all that. From October 8 onwards, Hezbollah also started attacking on the Israeli positions in the southern Lebanon, and that is in the northern Israel rather, in that sense. And therefore, Lebanon had gone through a terrible civil war. There was a problem between Israel had invaded and eventually had to leave. And then Hezbollah got up and Hezbollah fought with them. Since then, Hezbollah has become the biggest army in the region. I mean, non-state actor, but a very powerful one at that. So Israel, after decimating the Hamas rather completely, and their main leader, Ismail Haniyeh, in Tehran, when he was just attended the swearing-in ceremony of the new president, Dr. Pezeshkian, and they removed him, which showed that whatever the aura around the Israeli intelligence agencies was there before October 7th, that was lost completely. I mean, people started wondering whether they are still as strong as that. So they have redeemed themselves by doing this and by eliminating nearly full political leadership of Hezbollah and most of the military leadership of Hezbollah. But this is also a dangerous situation in this. And that's when Iran was forced to. Iran could have taken the plea that my country, my sovereignty has been violated, like it had been done in April when Israel had attacked the Damascus, the Iranian consulate or the embassy. And Iran they did throw some 300 odd missiles and drones and all the attacks, which was prevented to hit except one or two places. And the Americans were in the know. Everybody was in the know that Israel is going through. This was sort of a face saving for Iran. Okay. And then Israel was also provided this opportunity to counterattack. Now everybody is hoping if this April scenario will play out again. Now this time again, also if you come to think of it, is Iran was not taking any action except emboldening its own proxies. Direct action was not taken by Iran. But then with the decimation of Hezbollah and the leadership of Hamas, Israel within domestically was facing a major pressure from its own mullahs and others and everybody thinking that it's just a paper tiger. That means it is not able to look after us or can't secure us. And as such, in Iran also has internal dissensions for various socioeconomic reasons that they're going on. So they had to take some kind of revenge. But I am told that they had shared this information also with the Americans. Okay. They've been talking to Americans all the time.
That's a very interesting point, and I like to bring that point here as well. And I like to pick on that thread because this rhetoric between Israel and Iran has, as you're pointing out, has time and again snowballed into firing missiles at each other, or Israel doing covert attacks in Iranian territory, and Iran responding with some barrage of missiles which are fired at Israel, which because of Iron Dome most of them doesn't hit. But this apart, there's another rhetoric also going on, and that's really important. The other world powers, the Western world, specifically the European countries, the NATO countries, the United States itself, what are they saying? And 2-3 statements I'd like to point out, and then perhaps we can understand them better. First is coming in from the French president, very important NATO ally. But the French president is very critical of Israel's Gaza invasion now, saying that it has to stop immediately. And he's not mincing any word. Macron is not mincing any word. That's one part. The other part is, United States of America. There's an election going on. It can be part of the election rhetoric as well, but all of us have seen how former President Donald Trump, who is contesting now as well, what was his policy earlier. His statement coming in very clearly, exhorting Israel to go ahead and, bombard the Iranian nuke facilities, the civilian nuclear facilities which are there. So how does this kind of rhetoric, what does it reflect? It looks like, the others who have a stake in this are also not on the same page.
Well, you are right, absolutely. In fact, the only country that had a perceptible difference or definitive difference and influence over the Israelis is the United States. No other country had that kind of a power. But it seemed during this period, and I'm afraid to say so, that Israel seems to be running the U.S. foreign policy this time rather than the other way around. As we have seen that Secretary Blinken has been coming again and again to the region trying to have some kind of a ceasefire, and both sides, neither Hamas was ready nor was Netanyahu. He wants to decimate or destroy Hamas.
Correct me if I'm wrong. It looks like this is the first time that United States has not been possible to bring two warring factions, on the table when one of them is not Russia.
Yes, you are right, absolutely. I mean, this is something we have seen, and Israel and US have an umbilical partnership, actually, in a way. And the US is committed to the defense of Israel. There is no doubt about it. On the other hand, France has its own global ambitions. It has relationship with Israel in Lebanon. It has been part of it. It is fearing that, number one, the humanitarian catastrophe that has happened as a result of the October 7th is totally, it has bewildered the world, but the world has been just watching. That's the worst part. Defiance of international law has become the norm today. And that's unfortunate. Multilateral institutions have become totally useless, rather. And now we are seeing the superpowers, which can do something, are also not able to do anything because US is perhaps busy in its own elections, and everyone is waiting for the November 5th and the results thereof, what will happen eventually. So that they definitely do. But France in any way does not want to. I mean, if you remember, the French policies are also pretty different. They want to assert some independence and certain sanity in the international discourse. That is also true. So now they're trying to tell everybody that now what they came up and which, I don't know if you heard Netanyahu's speech after that. And he says a shame and all that. He called names to Macron. But eventually he called up Macron and told him, we need friends to support us and all. So overtly, his statement was like he's right. It's very messianic. And he said, we are going after this. This is for saving the civilization and all those kind of things. And he's an excellent orator. There's nobody can doubt about it as far as Netanyahu is concerned. And a great political survivor. But his own political survival is at stake in this. And that brings about, in my view, the major, I would say, the whole, how would you put it, that credibility crisis of Netanyahu's actions, whether it is for saving Israel or it is for saving himself. Now, that has been one of the biggest problem. In my view, I always say that he's sitting on a lion. The moment he gets down, the lion will eat him up because he has these cases pending against him.
We've seen this almost happening in Israel's domestic politics earlier.
Right. So that is there. Now, France has said that stop supplying arms. It has also criticized the US also. That you say something and you do something differently. So I think that there is an international pressure. Plus the whole world, is worried about the conflagration of this war if it happens. But as we saw that yesterday, the U.S. chief in the region of the staff, he was there with the Israeli general and talking to them exactly what should be the response. But in my view, today, the biggest challenge for Israel and Netanyahu is how to control the disintegrated Hezbollah fighters. If it becomes a guerrilla war, then Israel is looking for a very big problem at hand. It'll be extremely difficult for them because Hezbollah is a much bigger army. And they'll
be really outstretched on two fronts as well. They will be fighting Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and of course, Houthis would also want to make sure that they get a pound of the flesh here. And it'll be all positive for Iran because its proxies will then be doing what it has not been able to do, and it'll be back to square one where we started. So it looks like, there's a lot of rhetoric which is going on, and we will have to wait and watch, as you're pointing out, for 5th of November, perhaps Israel is waiting for that moment where it can go ahead and take a final call, when Netanyahu can take a final call. The European nations seemingly might take some time to either fall in line behind France and asking for more, responsibility from both Israel and United States, or they might break ranks and back United States on what its stand on Israel. But then again, that brings us to the most important question, and then the last one I would like to bother you with, Mr. Trigunayat. That is the Indian perspective. Now, Indian perspective is really important from two, three angles. One angle is our own interests. Our interests are really very, very important in West Asia. More than 50% of our energy requirements are met from West Asian countries, or the Arab countries. Again, specifically when we are talking about Iran, almost around 20% of our basmati rice export is to Iran. And last year we were around what, $30 billion worth of tea export as well to Iran. So there's a lot to lose for us. We import soybean oil from Iran as well. Specifically vis-a-vis Iran, we stand to lose a lot. Specifically vis-a-vis the Arab countries, if there is a conflict in that region, we stand to lose a lot. And it's just not us. It's about the other nations as well, but looking at it from the Indian perspective. Second perspective is that over the past few years, Indian heft at the global forum has increased. So has it increased to that particular level where perhaps, India can go ahead and try and bring the warring sides to the peace table? That's one question. And two, if it does not happen, how much do you think it is going to hurt India?
Well, in the first place, let me just say about the question that's going to impact India in what way. My view is that West Asia is our extended neighborhood. We have a dehyphenated policy, which means we have a strategic partnership with Iran and we have a strategic partnership with Israel. Both countries are our close friends, like most of the Arab world. They're strategic partners of India. So as long as the going is good, things move well. But we have very, very high stakes. As you mentioned, about 55% of energy resources coming from there. Almost all the sea lanes of communications are extremely important for us. Currently, we are protecting them from Houthi attacks and all. But if Iran gets into the act and closes the Strait of Hormuz, then we are going to have major problem for the energy supplies. In addition, the biggest problem for India, apart from the economy and the energy security, is the third E, which is our expatriates. We have 9.5 million Indians in the region. So if the war really breaks out, it's not going to be localized between Iran and Israel. All the other countries will come in.
Huge number.
Huge number. And it will be impossible really to do something about it. That's the reason that India is worried about it. And it has come out from the statements of Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister. What India has done is Prime Minister Modi has been in touch. And very recently, he has spoken to Netanyahu also. He met Mahmoud Abbas in New York. Shankar has been talking to everybody. He even went to Iran. Now, most likely, Prime Minister Modi in Kazan will meet the Iranian president as well. But it will all depend. I mean, the timing is of great importance because, see, if the reaction of Israel is carried out tomorrow, for example, then we don't have much time to do anything, depending on the extent of damage that Iran suffers from the Israeli strikes, which will decide the future course of action. And that's what the Iranians have been saying. As far as our heft is concerned, I mean, in the beginning, I had thought that when Israel-Hamas war took place, at that time, I thought that if we had started acting rather, more proactively and send some special envoy, do something, talking to both sides, maybe they would have accepted us because Palestinians like us, they know India is a genuine this thing. Israel also trusts us. So we could have played some role, although we don't have the same kind of heft that the Americans have, which I have begun to doubt now because Jewish lobby in the US is far too strong for any American, divergent policy on Israel. But still, I think that they listen to. And so we started off doing it a little later. But today the situation is very volatile. So we are making the statements, talking to others that how to minimize or contain it. Now, as you know, that both suffer from this mutually assured destruction syndrome, both sides. Mm-hmm. And the whole world is going to suffer because of this eventually.
Yeah, this mad syndrome is going to take everybody down.
Yes, that's the worst case scenario.
Okay, fair enough, Mr. Trigunayat. In a nutshell, what we've arrived at is that the situation is tense. It's very, very critical right now,
Very big.
and all stakeholders, and we're just not limited to Israel and Iran here, but all stakeholders, including the world powers like United States, the European countries, NATO, and its allies as well. And in fact, Russia has a very important role to play here because it enjoys good relationships with Iran and Turkey as well. Perhaps
So
there's
does
no,
China. Yes.
and so does China. So of course,
Yeah.
and India as well, and all of them have their interests at stake in this conflict. If situation go from bad to worse from here onwards, then everybody will feel the pinch. So we'll come back again, Mr. Trigunayat. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us, and it was really nice to have you on the show. We would love to
Thank
have
you.
you
It's a
again
pleasure.
with other matters and international issues as well. Thank you so much, Mr. Trigunayat.
Thank you.
So
Thank you
there it
so
is.
much.
There it is, as our expert, Ambassador Trigunayat, was explaining the real extent of the trouble the world is in due to Israel-Iran conflict, and whether it is beyond the point of no return. It looks like there is still some salvaging which can be done, but for that, all stakeholders will have to put their best foot forward and do the heavy lifting now. We'll keep a close track on the situation, and we'll come back again with these kind of analytical discussions on all international issues with the distinguished personalities like Ambassador Trigunayat. Keep watching Magazine India and subscribe to our channels, and also comment on our videos in terms of what you like and what you don't like. Thank you once again. Namaskar.